Hello, and welcome to today's webinar as part of this year's Ag Smart Money Week, brought to you by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Center for Agricultural Profitability and Nebraska Extension with support from the North Central Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Center. I'm Shannon Sand, agricultural economist with Nebraska Extension. Through daily webinars this week, Ag Smart Money Week aims to equip farmers and ranchers with the latest tools, information, and strategies to improve their financial management and risk management to build success in their businesses. You can find the full schedule and registration information on the Center for Ag Profitability's website, cap.unl.edu/smartmoney. This webinar is designed for participants who want to know more about figuring their cost of production for 2025 enterprises. Creating budgets for crop and livestock production is a fundamental business management practice. This webinar will offer a sneak peek of the 2025 Nebraska crop budgets and cover the principles of calculating cost of production and break-even costs. We'll also have an overview of UNL's free agricultural budget calculator program, which can assist you in creating enterprise budgets for your own operation. To present, we are joined by Glennis McClure, Farm and Ranch Management Analyst with Nebraska Extension. Glennis helps lead efforts with annual Nebraska crop and livestock budgets, as well as the Ag Budget Calculator program. We invite any questions during the presentation to be typed into the chat box or the Q&A. Glennis, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that all right. So thanks for their introduction. I really appreciate Shannon so much for, I guess, really leading the way with our Smart Money Week, and also to Ryan Evans, who is our communication specialist and helps us in so many ways. So thanks for taking time tonight. I thought it'd be good to schedule an evening session because a lot of folks do work during the day, and I see I do have a slow connection for whatever reason. And so my video might be a little wonky sometimes. So, but bear with us, okay? I hope it's not going out on me right now, but I kind of feel like maybe it could be. So anyway, I'll go ahead and proceed. And then, as Shannon said, please ask questions because what I've prepared might not be exactly what's on your mind or what you wanted to take from this session. And I want to make sure that we do answer your questions and understand what you're thinking and what you might need from a tool like I'm going to show with the ABC, and even the crop budgets and livestock budgets that we do. Okay, so with that. Okay, so I'm sure many of you have maybe heard me speak before. This is one of those slides that I include quite often. And it's just really important to understand our cost to production. And I'd say the number one reason is the thing that's on the top line there for marketing purposes. So if I know what I need to cover my cash and my economic costs, my cash costs or my economic cost, my total cost, I can do some things with a marketing plan. I can look ahead, say, hey, for 2025, this is what it looks like it's going to cost me to grow that crop or to raise livestock. And so what can I do on the marketing plan side of things? We also, I guess, when we look at, and this could be any enterprise, I do have crop enterprises noted here, but we can analyze what our potential returns are, whether it's, different crop enterprises, and we are doing some comparisons, or we can also do some looking and making some decisions from our livestock enterprises to our budgets. And then also determining, what our costs are, and looking at whether we should purchase new machinery versus like custom hire, looking at our labor costs and some of our, some things that might be marginal in productivity. What can we do with that? Now, I do have there a source, and we have CAP articles, as many of you know, and you can look at our cap.unl.edu and look at the publications drop-down box. And we have a lot of different, there's probably something goes up once or twice a week from our staff. But I wrote, along with Dr. Van Tassel, who was our department chair, I wrote an article on the 11 key management decisions that you can make, from your ag budget from your ag budgets and with cost of production. So this is just a few of those, but that article kind of covers or says more, a little bit more detail there. Okay, I'm going to go through some slides and introduce some concepts and give you a look at some things. And then we maybe take some time once I can get out of the PowerPoint and I can go live onto our website and we can look at some more things. But I wanted to show you, this is actually from our CAP website. Again, we've got our livestock decision tools, including budgets. We have a sheep and goat budgets. We have cattle budgets in there. And there's some other tools in there. So that is on our CAP website. And then we also, of course, have our university crop budgets. And actually, those have just been posted in the last few days. All right. So I grabbed a screenshot from our CAP website to show you that those come in various forms. And you might say, why? Okay, why do we do all these different, but it's all the same information for the most part. But we have a PDF file that can be downloaded, and there's 83 different crop budgets. There's like 12 introductory pages. Those kind of stay the same each year. We do tweak them. Like this year, our fuel cost was down. A year ago, I think it was like $3.45 on diesel. We used a $2.78 per gallon price for looking ahead or kind of currently. And so some of those things change some of our introductory comments as we're doing some calculations or talking about that. And you'll see then too, we in those introductory pages, we show you what we've used for those input costs. So interest rate being in there, our labor rates, our chemicals, fertilizer. Again, it's not all inclusive. There may be some chemicals, there may be, different fertilizer practices that you do, but you can look at what we base those prices, what we based our budgets on. Now, again, we create our budgets for the university, for Nebraska only, so that they can be used as a guide. So you should never really take one of our budgets and say, that's exactly what my cost of production is going to be. No, because you've got different equipment, you've got, different labor, you might have paid or unpaid labor. And again, what your inputs are going to be different. So we have a PDF file. And that's PDF is really that printable file that you could go in and print off a few pages or print the whole thing if you want. It's a nice thick document if you want to do that, or just look at it online, right? And then there's an Excel file. We've done our budgets for years and years in Excel, and we do have people that appreciate that and use Excel still. So they could go in and modify some of those budgets, but it's kind of tedious. You really have to know how to use Excel to do it properly. There's lots of formulas. If you can imagine, there's 80 some different sheets in that file. So it's a big file. And so you got to really need to know what you're doing to use that and to tweak those or whatever. Again, but then we have our ag budget calculator. We refer to it as the ABC. So what we've done there is then I've taken all of the information from those Excel files, which is also what you'll see in the PDFs. Those are just pages copied. They're very similar in format. But I take that information then and plug it into our ag budget calculator program. And then we've got a drop down there, and I'll show you that. But we've got a drop down in that program where you could say, well, that corn budget's pretty close to what I do. It's irrigated. I know my yield's going to be different. My acres is different and so on. You can go in and make those changes, but you can actually find maybe budgets that are dry land, irrigated, different yields, different parts of the state. We have some eastern Nebraska budgets and so on. So we do vary those things, and you could grab one that kind of looks pretty similar and then just start working on it in our ag budget calculator. So you just need an account and you can go in and do that. So I'm going to just kind of walk through some of that with you here tonight. But I wanted to let you know that our CAP website has those budgets loaded in there now. And so they're just within the last couple of days. And again, I appreciate Ryan for helping get those up on our website and basically newly published. This year we have 83 different crop budgets, again, Nebraska budgets, representing 15 different crops. You'll see corn, soybeans. We have mostly corn budgets. We have 25 some corn budgets. We took out a couple soybean budgets this year because of the dicamba, not using certain things there as far as practices go. We did add a popcorn budget. Nebraska has a lot of popcorn, so that was a new thing we added. That's budget number 42. And so anyway, again, those budgets loaded into the Ag Budget Calculator, and you can pull those down and use those on your own. So just to take a real sneak peek here, I've done just spent a little bit of time, and I usually do a little bit more analysis than literally what I've had time to do, but I wanted to share with you what our 24 figures versus the 25 figures look like. Now, as I mentioned, one of the factors that's going to make a difference is like that fuel cost. The fuel cost has come down. We did increase labor a couple dollars an hour from $25 to $27 an hour. But again, you can set your own rate there. Interest rates were a little higher, as we know. And then some of the chemicals, a lot of them had a little bit of an increase. There were a few that actually were lower. Fertilizer makes a big difference. So if the crop is using fertilizer, that can make a big difference in our costs. So we have in our budgets cash costs and economic costs. And I just really want you to understand as well that the cash costs are just the cash things that you're paying for. Okay. Again, you might be paying cash labor, or it could be unpaid. It depends on how you decide. You're paying cash for all of your inputs. You're paying cash for your fuel, the repairs, those kinds of things. So that's your cash cost. And the economic cost is all of those costs plus depreciation and opportunity cost of investment. And that can be pretty huge. If you've got your land and it's paid for, and let's say, it's worth a lot per acre, we figure like a 3% opportunity cost. Now, again, you can vary that right in the program. You can say, I'd really like to see a 4% return or a 2%, whatever you want to do there. But we kind of keep that consistent. Cash costs on dry land corn 24,307 for 20, all of our dry land corn budgets together, bushel average yield, all right. And then our economic costs are up to 477 and 455, because again, machinery has not gone down in price, right? So a lot of factors go into that with the economic cost. Now, again, I try to remind people that there's an economic principle that, it really comes into play in that in the short run, we might be okay just to get along with selling our crop and making some, above our cash costs. All right. But it's in the long run that you want to replenish your equipment, pay for those capital items and so on. And so we really ought to be covering our economic or the total cost of production in the long run. And that, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. So we do go through periods. We have gone through periods before the last run up in prices where we were really struggling. We were just basically covering those cash costs. So, and again, here's the irrigated corn figure that averages about 239 if I look at all of those budgets. And again, they're across the state. So, we have some that are 275 bushel irrigated. We might have some around that. I don't know if there's a 20 or 230. So anyway, it's somewhere in there, but that's our average. And you can see how our projections on costs and how those change as we look at 25. Soybeans, the dry land average 47 bushel, irrigated 73 bushel. So we're going from 697 to 658. So there's a little bit of a decrease on that. And the economic cost, you can see what's happened there. Again, we try to, as we do these budgets, kind of keep consistency. But again, let's say you had to, replace and you had major costs in some pivots. Let's say you replaced a tractor. Those aren't cheap, So, your economic cost from one year to the next could really change. All right. So that we always encourage people to do their own budgets. And then you can see wheat is another one. But we've got sugar beets in our budgets. We've got dry edible beans, millet, wheat, as noted here, alfalfa. There's, some places there's quite a big cash crop of alfalfa. So anyway, there's 15 different crops in our budgets. And so I just picked these as some of the main ones. And you can see how some of those numbers have changed as we look at 2025. So that's kind of our sneak peek. But you can go to our CAP website and you can actually look at all of those budgets now too, because those are on that page that I shared with you. And it'd be cap.unl.edu/crop budgets. And you can see in the drop downs across the top where to find those budgets. Okay. So I'm going to switch over now, though, and talk a little bit more specifically then about our Ag Budget Calculator. And we're really trying to design and make this program really, a great program. We've done a lot to it over the last several years. I have had some great, wonderful comments from some producers that have used it in major ways in making some decisions. They're looking at actually what I really like about the program is that there's a whole farm. So I can do like 3 or 4 or 10 different ag, budgets and crops right now. And then I can aggregate those. I can put those all together and then actually run like a pro forma profit and loss, kind of look at what 2025 might look like with all of those budgets included. And again, we're still pretty focused on crops. We're really close in launching our livestock. Our livestock budgets. I might give you a sneak peek of that too if we have a little time here this evening. So, but this program can be used by producers, farm managers, students, bankers, and a lot of the ag industry. I should say that we actually have a lot of interest in the budgets that we prepare from the ag industry, bankers and so on. They want to see what that cost of production kind of thing looks like. And I think folks really like this. I think we can tout this. And my predecessors that worked on these budgets, put a lot of detail in there. So, it's showing like on the fertilizer, what fertilizer and what's that cost of fertilizer and how much are you applying? There's those details in those budgets. And, some other universities, some other states don't really put the detail. They don't show you the detail. They say fertilizer is going to cost this much, per acre. And we say, well, this is how we arrived at that. So we do have a lot of interest from folks with our budgets. So with the ABC program, again, it's free. Folks can use it on their PC, their Mac. They can use it on their mobile. I would suggest, though, that if you're really working on your budget, or sit down with your laptop and really go at it. Okay, it's better, works a lot easier if you've got a full screen. You've got rather than trying to look at it on your mobile device. I think the mobile's nice if you ever want to check into something, like if you're at a supply place or whatever, and you're saying, well, what did I budget that chemical and what are they asking for now? How's that change? So you can kind of check things with that. But I'd say for the most part, I tell people to use their computer as they're working on their budget. So, and then I've already mentioned this, but you can download and modify our university budgets. We'll have that similar for livestock. You can do farm by farm, field by field, crop by crop. So I can say, hey, I got 500 acres of dryland corn. I'm just going to put all those acres in, and I'm, my practices are pretty similar. But what happens if that 500 acres, let's say, one field is rented and I pay this much for that rent, another field is rented and there's a different there's a different cash rent or different crop share arrangement with that. And then I have some that are owned. You can actually very, very simply use actually a duplication feature that we have in this thing where I can do like a base budget. Here's my dryland corn budget. And then I can duplicate that. And then I can say, okay, well, I can start to make those divisions by farm or field or however I want to do it, and works really nice. And then again, easily pull those back together and say, okay, now after I have all this done, what is my overall production on that crop? So we can determine per unit, per acre, or head, or total costs. And we can also estimate revenue in the budgets. If you look at that Excel file and even the PDF that comes off the Excel file, we did not do anything with revenue. Now with this budget calculator, you usually put in an estimated revenue feature. I'm actually working on, we operate a lot on grants. I'm actually working on a grant right now where we're trying to get a marketing plan. So once we've done all this budgeting, how can we pull things together and make a marketing plan as we look ahead? So we have lots of dreams and ideas on how we can continue to advance this. And then we've got other features. We've got analysis features along with the report section in the program. So, all right. So this was someone that I really appreciated hearing back from, that this person found ABC tool really useful, and they used it to create their baseline budgets and to make some future income projections. And they made a decision, and this was a couple years ago, but to buy 450 acres of farmland. Okay, it's like, wow, they're using this thing. That's nice. We have about over 1,700 users. We have user accounts. So everyone is free. You just create an account by putting in your a user ID and a password, as we're used to doing with many programs. It's completely yours. We do not look at individual records. We don't know if you've been just messed around and did a partial budget, or if you've got all your budgets completely done. We have no idea. Okay, so it's just there. It's just that way, so you can get back to your account and continue to work. We've got over 3,800 crop budgets in the system currently. So we do watch those numbers, because when we're looking for grants and so on, we want to know what's the usability, and we really, really, really like to have your feedback. We like to know when you have issues. We like to know, little quotes like this. How are you using it? Because obviously all of that's really important as we continue to make this thing, continue to improve it. We've done a lot of workshops. We do something like this. I can do online very easily, but I can also do in person. So if there's a group of folks in your area that you'd want to have come in and really go into some detail, I love coming in and working with people in a group and being able to answer the questions individually in a workshop setting as well. And then we've had some really good feedback from folks that have started to use it. So again, we're always interested, though, in if there's any issues. This screen is just a good reminder for me to see what I didn't tell you already, just to highlight a few things. Again, we can download our budgets. We can use the duplication feature. So once I've set up some base budget, I can do that. We do run our reports or cash, so we can see our cash basis, our cash cost production versus our economic, and economic just means total. There is that revenue section. We do have a analysis risk section. We'll look at some kind of what that looks like. And then the whole farm now. So in that whole farm, we can do some reconciliations. We can do add in or change or whatever our overhead costs that we put in. We can simply put in, as we have in our budgets for a long time, just a flat rate per acre on overhead. Whereas, you could go in and say, no, here's what I pay accounting, my utilities. I can actually, be more specific in entering our overhead. And then I've mentioned the whole farm. This is where we can pull everything together and kind of look at our overall cost of production, like for different crops. And then we can actually look at, kind of what I'd call a pro forma profit and loss as we look ahead. We've got the risk module, which has to do with the crop insurance decisions, break even, some comparison features, and then now there's a cash flow. And so that's really cool too, as you want to look ahead for cash flow is, you're doing a lot of work. You're putting a lot of information in here, and you're seeing kind of what months you're going to be using products, maybe selling some things. And so that can all be then pulled together in a cash flow, a month by month cash flow. And you can go in and make adjustments to that because it's going to show like, okay, I planted in May. And so I've got all this seed that I used in May. But you might not have paid for it in May. You probably paid for it earlier, in some cases later. So you can actually move that amount around to when you actually do pay for it. So it's actual cash flow. All right. So that's kind of a cool feature. And then the livestock budgets are coming soon. All right. So I did some screenshots, and we'll look at the program hopefully here in just a little bit. But again, just to kind of run through some features with you. Our action items are all along the right side of the screen. We do have drop-down boxes on the top that are very similar to some of this. But this is just an example where I pulled down our 2025. I pulled down a couple of our budgets into my account, and I pulled down the 33 corn budget. Now I could have changed this name to say, this is corn, 150 acres on the Jones place. Okay. I could have described it in the name however I wanted to. Okay. But again, I just kind of kept it generic. And then soybeans then too. And these are both irrigated budgets, just as an example. And then this is where I edit operations. So this is where I could change the name. I can actually change the year. So you wouldn't have UNL. I tag UNL because that just lets you know that you're pulling down one of our budgets, but you wouldn't be necessarily using that. But I always tell people, if you ever see anything, a material or an input or a machinery or power unit marked with UNL, that just came off of our budgets. All right. So anything like that. And then like this happens to be the 500 acre corn, 275 projected yield, irrigated. It's cash leased, and I pay so much per acre. Or it could be owned, and what's the value? If I wasn't farming it, what could I rent it for? That's kind of that opportunity cost. Or you could even put in a share lease and then look at what is your costs in that enterprise, and so on. So that's really what goes on that page. That's pure and simple. It's pretty straightforward. You're just kind of tagging what's going on as you're setting up your budgets. Now, this is a little busier. This is actually, though, where you're telling folks, you're basically including into your budget creations step by step. Here's what I do. Okay. I spray, burn down, I plant, I do these in this month. When it says okay, you've got the details entered that you need. And the edit button is the pencil. I could actually copy. So let's say I have multiple herbicide operations and they're pretty similar. I'm using the same power unit, the same sprayer, or I'm using a self-propelled sprayer, whatever it might be. And it's very similar, but at different products or less of one thing and that kind of thing. I could actually copy that and not have to re-enter all that stuff. So there's those kinds of features. And if I mess up, I've got the trash can handy too. But these are the things that, how do we grow that crop? We haul it, we harvest it, we haul it, with a cart, we truck it and so on. So, okay. And then this is just, again, one of those major areas where you're going to put in those yearly rates and prices, like that diesel price that I talked about, the interest rate, just a few things go into that. You're tagging what year you're talking about. You're adding your labor. So if I'm the operator, do I want to be paid so much per hour? We did a session, I think it was Monday already on Smart Money Week, where we talked about adding in, let's say I need family living from all of these crop enterprises or all of my enterprises. How much per acre should I budget? You could actually do that in your labor figure here. And so whenever you see these little triangles, that means I can open those up. Again, this is a screenshot. I can't do it right now, but this is where I have my list of power units and so on, my list of materials, my irrigation systems. Again, what did they cost? How are they operated? Are they diesel? Are they electric? What's your energy cost on systems? That's really where that information goes. And then there's those vehicles and facilities that we don't want to forget about that also add to our costs, right? Cost of operations in a lot of cases. So enterprise revenue, again, that's pretty straightforward. You basically put in what you project your sales price to be per bushel, and had some stocks that were going to be rented for $20 an acre. So that added to the revenue. If I got crop insurance after the fact, I could go back in and put this into my budgets and then see kind of how things turned out if I wanted to. We have placeholders in there for that kind of thing. And so then we can toggle when we do a report. This is just a summary. I just grabbed pieces of the report here, but we've got the economic report, the total cost report, or a cash cost report. So again, just as things go, we have our revenue, value per bushel, value per acre in the total. We have, gross revenue, our operating cost total, net above operating. Then we've got ownership and overhead costs. So for a total economic cost, and then what is that? If this is what we're selling it for, this is our economic cost, what is that net? And this is on a per enterprise basis for now. This is not the whole farm report. This is on that particular enterprise basis. And then this is a whole farm, just a picture where I have that corn and soybeans in here. And this is my total revenue off of all my bushels, my total cost, and so I'm netting on that 1,000 acres, $30,000. And this is on the economic side of things. So I'm just doing that projection. This is kind of a picture, but we actually have it. So it's broke down in more detail than that, of course. And then these are the decision-making analysis features. So when you get information into, a pretty complete enterprise budget, you can start to look at some of this stuff for making some decisions as well. So we'll glance at that. Here is a break-even picture. You can do a break-even. What's my crop price break-even? What is my yield break-even given a certain price, right? You can toggle and say, okay, what happens if my yield changes 15%? All right, so here's my base. I have 275 bushel yield on my corn. This was my break-even figure. That should look familiar from what we just saw on a screen prior here. But let's say our crop yield changes 15%. From 275, it drops down to 238. What does that do to my break even then above total economic cost? Or let's say I do better than that. My yield is even better. What does that look like? And I can toggle and look at these different reports. I can look at just the cash side of things if I wanted to. And so we've kind of created that for you, as well as a sensitivity chart. So again, this is given a sale price of $365. I do have some crop residue in there, that $20 an acre. And so if my yield stays at 275, again, this is my, sort of that break even figure. And then what happens if I have less of a crop or more of a crop? How does that change that figure? Okay, expected net return figure, 7804. And then how does that change given some changes there? Now, all right, so we also, though, in addition to that, now that was pure and simple, but a lot of times then too, we got to add in the feature of what crop insurance did we choose? And so some of our break evens, I mean, obviously that comes into play with our choice of crop insurance sometimes if we have less of a yield than we anticipated. And I just, again, I'm going to go back. I didn't talk about this much, but we've got the state, Dr. Walters, several years ago, we worked on this feature into the program, and it's called our risk analysis module. And we've got the state divided into crop reporting districts. And so when we get to the risk module, let's say I'm in Gage County, and I click on this area, and it's going to show me the APHs and that information for that area. So it's not county by county, it's crop reporting district. And so it gives you a pretty good generalization of some of those figures for the year. But I just did quickly, this is a report that I can get off of. So here's my original projections on a budget. And if rather than 275 bushel yield, I have 185 bushel yield. What did I pay for insurance? This is my risk price, my indemnity. So I did get some money back, but it still shows though, I still have a net, negative, even though I had this crop insurance. It didn't cover everything, but, rather than losing much, much more than that, I did cover some with my crop insurance. So that's kind of what we're doing with that risk module. Okay, I'll stop just for a moment. Any questions anybody has? You see anything come in?
I do not see anything at the moment, Glennis.
Great. Okay. So I don't know, I guess I should have asked earlier too, how many of you are interested in our livestock enterprise budget feature of this program? And we do have some cattle budgets already on the CAP website, and those are in Excel. But just wanted to know if anybody wants to make note of their interest in the livestock, we can take a look at that as well. We always refer to our ABC as when we kick this off, and I think Shannon will be doing a lot of work with this, hopefully this next year on some of the livestock budgeting. But if anybody has any, if you want to make a note in the chat, are you interested in the livestock? If so, what livestock? It'd just be good for us to know. Okay. This is our development team, and I again appreciate that Shannon has joined us on that team, especially when it comes to livestock. And we are starting to work on a specialty crop budgets right now too, and adding that feature in. We just had a meeting on that today to like, okay, if you grew cucumbers, again, what are all those costs? How do you figure what you're going to price those cucumbers at as you sell those? So we always like to make note that we have been very blessed to have some USDA NIFA funding to help us develop this ag budget calculator. And so we like to mention that, as well as initial funding from this Nebraska Soybean Board and Nebraska Corn Board as well. So, okay, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and flip into the program. So I'm gonna stop share for just a moment and get out of this. All right. Everybody's kind of quiet, but you're certainly welcome to chat with us in the chat. Okay. All right. So do you see my screen okay now for the ABC program? Is that
Yes, I
right?
do.
Awesome. Okay, good. All right, so this kind of looks familiar. This is where I took those screenshots from. This is my account in the Ag Budget Calculator program. And as I mentioned, there's drop downs across the top. Here's that duplication feature. I can just start fresh and do a create crop budgets. I've got, here's all those manage inputs. I showed you that list. All right. And just to look at that, let's just look through those really quickly. Annual rates. Oh, okay. So it's telling me I'm not logged in. Okay. Let me, oh, didn't like that. Okay. Now are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So what I did here is I'm gonna, I oftentimes refer to this left side. I'm gonna cancel and go back up and show you. Here's that drop down. Here's that annual rates. And so it opens up. I have all these different years, different things that I've done in the program. And here, if I click on this pencil, I'm into that 2025 UNL account. And so now I have gasoline at a certain price, diesel, propane, so on. I put some of those things in there in case I was using anything with, with gas or diesel, but primarily most of my power units are going to be diesel. So that's that figure. That's really kind of how we did our crop budgets. I do have operating interest rates. Again, that could be different anywhere. Now I've heard even some up to 9% or so. And how long do you carry that operating interest before it's paid? Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? What is it? And that opportunity investment. So as I mentioned, we use like 3%. So that's all that goes into that page. All right. And I'm just going to save that. I didn't make this, but I'm going to go back up here. I can toggle that out. Okay. Or I can open it up or toggle it and shut it. All right, labor. I've got a lot of labor, folks. All right, I've got Shannon in here. Shannon is unpaid. She's hourly but
That's
unpaid.
fine.
She might be. I'm sorry. You know what? She might be a daughter or something like that, and so she
That's
works
right.
so just a little bit. So she might do some things, and I have that value. I have her valued, but it's unpaid. And then similarly, I could do that with, let's see here. Okay, go back to my labor list here. I could do that. So you notice I have me, or owner operator. Okay, I can do a lot of different things with that in my value. Here I've got, here's my hourly rate, and I am paid. So might be working for a corporation. I work so many hours, and you know, there is a tax figure included as well. And here's where you designate whether they're, if you're an owner, if you're a family member, if you're hired labor, okay? And so paid or unpaid. So we have different options with that. And those will flow through as we do work, as we do operations on the farm or ranch, that labor figure is going to show up. All right, so power units. Here's my list of power units. Again, I'll show you here. Then anytime you see something with UNL, you can see I have various combine units. I have, you know, these are power units, all right? Anything tagged with that, that means it's coming off of our budgets, all right? If I have just a regular old big red tractor, I like to show people that or talk about that. But I'll look at the, let's look at the here. So again, what was the list price of that? What did I purchase it for? This would be like, what is a comparable unit? List price, you know, I purchased it, it was 5 years old. I'm going to keep it for another 5 years. Sorry. Sorry. No, I knew that was coming. Anyway, there you know, we can put in then what we figure is our salvage value or have this thing calculated, okay? The program we use engineering formulas from the Association of Ag Engineers. And so that information is in here to do some calculation as well as repairs here. I can name my power units, you know how we have, you know, we have good names for some things, right? And what is our PTO, our horsepower? It's run off of diesel. And what is that typically used for diesel? I mean, what's an average fuel used per hour? And, you know, again, the engineering formulas say 11 gallons, but I say, oh no, it only uses about 10. It's pretty good. And then we've got these categories. When you see that, there's just a few choices. It's really not hard to do. But again, how big is that unit? What's the category for repairs? And again, that all relates back to our engineering formulas. Similar for the implements. Here's our materials. Okay, for whatever reason. Okay, and with that, I've got a lot of materials in here, as you can see. And I also, you know, go in here, and for the 25 season, I'm figuring $85 a gallon for Acuron. Okay, so this is what goes in. Basically, you can set this all up and say, these are the products that I use. Here's what I'm figuring on paying for those. And if it's in gallons, you know, you can actually apply so many ounces or pints or whatever. So we've got those unit of measurements kind of figured out in the program as well. So, and then the irrigation systems, I might have multiple pivots. Some might be electric, you know, again, different prices, different costs, all of those kinds of things. You know, what is your lift? What is the cost on that? What is your energy costs and so on, and well as overhead kinds of things with vehicles and facilities. So with those things, we're always kind of looking at what's the depreciation on an annual basis, what's the repairs, and what's that opportunity cost that's based off the value of what you've got into those machines. All right. So manage enterprise. I always kind of come back to my manage enterprise over here. And this is what I'm working on, 2025. I've got a couple budgets in here right now. And so we looked at our setup page, our edit operations page. Now, again, we're going to look at this, this operations. And so I had a screenshot of this earlier, and I'll just show you how this works. Here's planting no-till. And I'll go in and I'll show you how that is edited or what goes into that. Again, I can describe the operation however I want. I could just say plant. I could say plant corn. I could say whatever, okay? I could say I put in when. Let's say I'm paying somebody to do custom planting. Then I would say I'm paying so much an acre, that kind of thing. 100% of it's done by custom. In this case, though, I'm going to show where I'm just planting my own, and I've got this labor. This comes off of what I was talking about the other day, is I needed $40,000 from my enterprises. And so I plug that into my labor categories. But let's say I want to change that, and I'm going to say Dad. I pay Dad. I'm going to delete this one, and I pay Dad 100%. He likes to plant, so I have him in at a certain rate, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's see here. It doesn't like something that I did here. Okay. Oh, I don't know. Okay. It wants me to assign, and it just needs to save it. Okay. For whatever reason, it's not saving it. Didn't like that I made that change. I'm going to save and go back. And now it's coming up with an error because it doesn't have the labor in there. So let's go back and see if we can get this to work. Dad, 100%. Okay, there it is. Okay. I don't know why we had to go out and come back in. But anyway, anytime you see something red here, I can click on it and I can see that, oh, okay, Dad's at $29 an hour and he works about this many hours on the farm total. And he's included as a family member. Okay. I can also see here, anytime there's red, it's kind of cool. I can see where is Dad used. So let's say he does corn planting, he does some other things in some other budgets. So I can actually look at that right here. All right. Now I can return to the previous page right here, and this is where we were. He's done 100% of the planting. I can add in the power unit. So right now I have a medium tractor in there. I'm going to switch it to that big red tractor. I can go to my implements. I have a university planter in there right now. I could go back to a different one if I wanted to. Here's a no-till planter. And so I'm not going to have two planters, so I'm deleting one, okay? So this is what I'm doing is I drop down one of our budgets, and now I'm going in and modifying that basically. And then here's the materials. So I might say, no, I had entered my fertilizer at a different cost per gallon. This is starter, and my seed cost might be different. All right. So I would have entered those in the materials, or I could go right here. I could click on it and I could go here. I see the summary and I could go in here and edit it. So this is where I have $300 per seed unit. There's 80,000 case seeds in that. And so, we plant so many case seeds. And so that's that. Okay. So a very, very quick overview of that. What I really like too in this program, and this is part of the overall report as well. But when I'm doing these individual operations, I can actually click on this little thing here and it'll show me that my big red tractor, here's that labor cost. Here's the fuel cost. This is per acre. Okay, here's the fuel cost, repairs, depreciation, opportunity cost. So it's costing me about $19.51 to run my tractor and my no-till planter. I might be paying someone $20, $25, to do custom, and I have to wait for them to come, So, we've got our figure of what it cost. And we can say, I'm not going to figure in the opportunity cost, or I'm going to, so you can do whatever you want with that and see that cost. And then we've got our purchased materials. So I'm putting $155 per acre on in my planting operation. So just in that alone, the plant no-till, this is what I've got. I really like that because it's a good cross-check as I'm working on these things, that is there. Okay. Let me know or stop me if there's any questions that come up. I use the back button a lot. Go ahead.
No, I just said I will pause you if we get some questions. So
yeah. Okay, very good. So I'm just I'm going back to that. If I really get lost or I want to go back and just see, I was showing you this. I was showing you all of these things that are already done. All right. So that's the detail that goes into that. In irrigation too, I could say this happens to be irrigated. I've got this university pivot in there. And in that I've got, the well, the distribution system, the pump, the power unit, the energy information, other expenses, labor setup, that kind of thing in here. So there's quite a bit that goes into those irrigation systems. But again, once you have those set up, once you have those designated, it's really nice. So if I do all this for 2024, 2025, I can actually do some duplications and then just go and make some modifications of my own budgets from year to year as well. All right. So I'm gonna show you. The clipboard is the reports, all right? And I wanted to talk or show you a little bit about that. You saw I did a screenshot just to show you a summary of that before. I can actually expand all the details in this report. And you'll see then it says, okay, seed. So we're actually have the details in here, what we included. There was some fertilizer in, yeah, we did apply fertilizer by the irrigation system. So in that operation, we did that. Here's all the pesticides and all of those things, repairs, other, all the way down. So this is where we get down to, and I changed some things, but now we're at total economic cost of 344. And then my net return is 28 cents on this particular crop. So I want to show you too that you might say, well, I'd like to see this report in a nice printed form. So we have this default set up where we've got this main report and I have the economic cost on there. I can look at this field operation cost breakdown and this material and service cost breakdown as I look at this report. So I clicked print save. I could save it as a PDF, name it and put it in my files, okay? But here's that I have the details open. So I have all the little triangles open so I can look and see what I've got included in here. All right, and which is really, really nice. And here's that, that bottom line figure, total economic cost of 344. I can scroll on down because these extra pages were included as a default. You can uncheck them. You don't have to include them. But I really, really like this report as well, because if you look at our Excel files, you look at the old way we did things, we always showed what those operations costs per acre. So I'm using my own equipment. I've got, in this case, I'm using all my own equipment, my pivot cost, what is that going to cost per acre? And then here's all the materials. So I can have a breakdown of each of those operations and what those materials are. So I can print it, send it over to my printer, or I can save it as a PDF and then go from there. Okay. So also, I mentioned this a couple times earlier on. So we've looked at this. Here's the whole farm section. Actually, here's the UNL budget. So just if I'm in here working and now I'm going to say, okay, now I want to do a wheat budget, let's say, on that university budget list, I've got them numbered from 1 to 84. They're alphabetized and numbered. Looks like my internet is causing me some issues. Anyway, wheat. I said I could add a wheat budget in. So let's say I add this, this budget, I have some irrigated ground and I'm going to do a wheat budget. Let's say this number 81. So I could look at the report right here and I could say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and just copy it. So if I hit copy, it says this enterprise was successfully copied into my. Again, it's easy to delete stuff. If I didn't really like that, I'm like, oh, I messed up. I shouldn't have done that. I could easily just go into my manage enterprise list and delete it. But here I could say, like I told you, I could say, this is my wheat on the north, I'll just do this.
On the northeast corner or whatever.
North farm. Yeah. Right. Exactly. All right. And then I might have my own year. I could put it somewhere in one of these other yearly files or create a new, I could create a new budget year and drop it in. But it's wheat. What's my yield potential, or what am I figuring on? How many acres? It's irrigated. Here's like an owned crop, owned ground. What's that cash rent equivalent? I could change that to, a couple $100 an acre. And I could change my real estate taxes there too. So, okay. And then save it. And then I'll show you. Okay, I've got it saved and I can go right into edit and field operations. So here's all the field operations for that wheat crop. So I could go in and say, yeah, so I prepared the ground. It's winter wheat. I sprayed some herbicide. Um, well, yeah, I drilled. I drilled then. Okay. So if I go in, I could go in here and again, similar kind of thing, what power units on, what materials were used. So I could go in and say, I don't use that. I use something else. I could just drop it and then go in and change that. So that's how easy it is to drop in a budget and then work with it. So I'm just going to show you manage enterprises. I'm just going to delete it because we added it in easily. We can actually just get rid of it. Okay. So it's not there anymore. All right. And then the whole farm. I'm going to just show you the whole farm. So this is where your cash flow, where I put in some vehicles and facilities and I say, okay, I've got this pickup truck and here's how much it's used. This is what it cost. I'm going to split that evenly in cost of over all my enterprises. Okay. You could do that. Same with facilities. I could do a bin. No, that bin is primarily used for corn. So I'm going to charge everything to corn on that bin. So my shop is a general building and I can say, okay, let's split it by over all my enterprises. So that's kind of how that works. Overhead expenses, as I mentioned, this is where you'd put in the detail and so on. But I'm going to click on this whole farm right here and show you how those reports worked. Again, I'm still in that year. I've got these two enterprises. They're red. I could go back and look at the details on them, open them back up if I wanted to. Okay, now these are two different crops. So, I just have to realize that. Here's that picture I showed you earlier of, just a graphic basically of how that pulls together. But here's a report. And this report says that it is mixed crops. So I can't look at the bottom line and say, let's see. Uh, um, well, it's not showing me a cost per bushel because they're mixed. Okay, it wouldn't make any sense to do that. But if let's say I had 3 different corn budgets, I could click all those 3 corn budgets and pull those together into this report. But this then, though, why do we even do this? Well, this is my total, kind of a look at the total, what I'm projecting for revenue, what all of my seed costs are. I can actually go over here in a farm report and then, I've got a nice, how much seed do you need to buy? How much certain pesticides, how many gallons? So once I've got all this in here, I've got this nice little list that I go and take with me as I'm doing, some of my purchases. But anyway, so here we've got the net above operating, total economic cost and our net. So we're with those two enterprises, we're figuring 29,000. So here's that pro forma. What's included? Those enterprises are included in here into this particular report. So I think that's pretty cool. And then I'm going through it fast, but I just really wanted to give you an overview of what the Ag Budget Calculator looks like and what it can do. I'll click on the cash flow.
So we have a question,
And
Glennis. Can I give that to you
yeah,
real quick? Um, Someone was
sure.
asking, is it appropriate for a landowner to request the operating budget from the tenant?
I think that should be something that you talk about when your arrangement is first made. Okay. I think, I don't know that I would spring it on them. I mean, what if hopefully they understand this kind of thing. Um, you know, and you might basically you might want to say why, I guess, because I know right now too, with commodity prices the way they are, there's probably going to be some renegotiations going on, if rent's too high and they're absolutely not making any money, what's that going to look like? So I know some of that'll happen, but I don't know that I'd be really careful about springing it on them. Because again, what if they're not familiar with using this kind of tool? They can pencil out, here's what I'm figuring my fertilizer to be per acre and so on. And they can give you an idea. But I think it really probably, and Shannon, you could chime in on this too. I really think that's one of those things that you would probably want to include in your agreement. What is
Yeah,
a landlord? What kind of information does the landlord want or need, in their arrangement?
well, and again, it depends a lot on that lease arrangement because I've seen lease arrangements where, especially when commodity prices were real good and input costs were low, there might be like a little bump. in the lease if they had a really good crop year. So that's I've seen that included because of that reason.
Yeah.
Or depending on kind of, again, maybe it's some sort of crop share or profit share it depends on the lease arrangements, really my understanding. So
Okay. So I clicked on the cash flow in the whole farm section. And so this would have both of those crops, everything together, anything I have in revenue. And you can see it splits it out over the months. And, and I could say, no, I'm going to sell it all at the end of the year. So I scroll over and I could change all of that. I could do that basically right here, but it says corn sales, soybean sales. So if I toggle those details, I can go in then and I can say what my beginning balance, cash balance is, and I could change the dates on these things. But there's, we can work, there's details in here on how do you, collapse this and put it all in December. And you can actually, what I like about this too is I could have all of this information in here and then download it as a CSV file, which is you can then load it into Excel or Google Docs or something like that, and then work with it from there. But this gives you, after you've done all this work and planning, again, you're going to probably see your materials primarily. In this case, we're looking at a January start time here, which is pretty typical for most. That's the default anyway. But look, most of my materials is going to be through that planting time, but I might have paid for it, before the end of the year, So you can be doing some of this planning and kind of look at some of those projected costs, now. And so we can open up the details here, like interesting, the materials are kind of like that. There's a lot there and it shows up in certain months. And so like, here's my seed, here's my fertilizer. That's not all the fertilizer, I'm sure. I think we've got, let's see. Or that's just how we have that one tagged. We've got 1034.0. I thought we had another fertilizer in there. I don't see it right now. Should be. Okay. So that's interesting. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I took that out or I didn't put it in or what. I'll have to look over that again because it should be there. Okay. But we've got all of these products and so on in there. And so you can move these around and I haven't, let's see. If I click on, I'm going to click on that one now. So here's my labor. Right now I've got dad, I'm paying him at this time frame. But if I wanted to move that, I've got him in April, but let's say I don't pay him till August. I could move that, toggle that over. All right. So there's different things we can do or, different ways of moving things, but all of these categories come up where I can just simply look back at the summary. Okay. So it's pretty slick, works pretty nice. But yeah, I'm gonna have to check on that fertilizer. Where'd that go? All right, so that's that. And now I do have a mention of, did we have anybody say that they were really interested in the livestock side of things tonight? Do you know, Shannon?
I haven't seen anything in the chat or the question and answer box, either one.
Okay.
So
Well, we'll just give you a sneak peek of that as well. So I'm just trying to think if we've covered most of this. There's a way to reconcile some of because this thing, as we put in those engineering formulas, it comes up with kind of what your repair costs are. Let's just look really quick here at a, again, if I get return to the whole farm and I go back to manage enterprises and I go to a report. Okay. Trying to think what I was thinking there. Do you know where I was going with that? Report.
no, ma'am. Are you showing them that you can just pick the individual commodity or versus the whole, which gives you a aggregated view
Right.
with the whole
We
farm?
could
Okay.
just click click on that. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be up in here in the whole farm, and I
Yeah.
think I showed them that. We
I
would
do
click
have
on
a
that.
question. Could you go a little more in depth with the economic report versus the cash report and the difference between the two? You kind of you talked about it a little bit earlier, but could you go a little more in
Yes.
depth into what the difference is between those two?
Yeah, so right now I have the economic report on, and I can show the details or not, right? I can have a nice little summary report. But as I'm looking at this, again, this is the value. It's kind of a cash value. Revenue is revenue, so there's really all of that is as such. These are cash expenses, operating expenses. The only thing that you're going to run across from time to time is unpaid labor. If you remember right, Shannon might have been unpaid or Dad was unpaid. I'm not sure which one I added in there.
Yeah.
But I had also in our webinar the other day, we kind of figured $40 per acre for $20,000 coming off of this enterprise and $20,000 coming off of our soybean enterprise. And so I had that in as labor. And so that could be cash labor or not. So you want to, these two would be, I mean, for sure the unpaid, the one that's marked unpaid would be in the economic and not in the cash. Okay. That's just usually fairly minor, but most of those expenses are going to come down here in depreciation, equipment, facility depreciation, and opportunity costs. So we have equipment opportunity costs, facility, and land opportunity costs. So these, and now we know taxes are cash expenses if we own ground, all right? In this case, I have cash rent in there. I didn't have owned ground in there. So that cash rent is cash expense. But these items right here would not show up on the cash side of things, okay? So here's our total economic. So all I have to do is go up here and I can toggle and I keep, the details are still open. So if you notice now that reconciled labor is still there, so I would want to, if that's going to be cash that I'm taking from this enterprise, that's okay. If not, I'm probably going to have to make some adjustment, maybe stick it up under unpaid or whatever, depending on what I want to do with that. Because we talked about this too, family living really needs to come from profits. And so in this case, though, we're just budgeting that figure into our budget. But let's say I don't have it in there, then I would look at my bottom line and say, okay, but I know I got to take this much $20,000, away from this or out of this budget to be used for family living. So you could do it so many different ways, but that's, I just have it factored in here right now. Then as we toggle down, okay, we have cash overhead expenses. We still have the land rent because that's cash. But you notice I don't have depreciation and opportunity costs in this report. So now it's $3.11 is our total cash. And I forgot now what was our economic versus our economic cost of 344. Okay. So I've got that labor out already, but if I didn't, I would have to really basically just take it out of my net returns if that's what I was going to charge to this particular enterprise. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
And just below here then too, we've got some other budgets, or some other, not budgets, but some other detail information, that can be included in reports if we want. So, okay. So it's really, I think I've had people tell me that the program is very user friendly. And I do ongoing training sessions, or actually Q&A sessions. So once you got into it, and let's say you had some detailed questions, I do my very best to answer. I've got sort of time set aside. And again, that's on the CAP website under the ABC training section. I've got, dates listed and times listed that I'll be online and work with folks. And I'll take phone calls or emails too, and try to help people. So that's what we do, right, Shannon? Okay. So, but I'm not sure. I was still trying to think where I went with that, but I'm going to go over here to the livestock. Now this is in a different account just because we actually are testing it. We're in a stage account, so we're still testing this. But I've got, I'll just kind of show you how how that is supposed to work. I'll just click on a new livestock enterprise. And here again, I could just name it and just say, this is my small, cow herd, or whatever you want to call it. I could put my year in there. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to figure this from January to December, or let's look at a different time frame. It might depend on, when I'm calving, if I'm doing fall calve or I'm doing spring calving, whatever it might be. And then I designate what the livestock type is. Really right now we're working with cattle because cattle's huge in Nebraska. We will have, sheep and goats and other things in here, but for now we're really focused on the cattle side of things. And you designate whether it's a breeding or non-breeding enterprise. And I'll just save and continue that. Oh, and that's okay. Let's see if this thing will work. Again, was in the testing phase. All right, it didn't click. Well, anyway, the breeding enterprise. Oh, it must have timed out on me. Okay. All right. So anyway, so here, let's just say this is that 100 cow herd. And then I could put my numbers in here. What's in my breeding herd? How many years do I keep those females? How many are cold each year and so on. What's their value? What's my weaning rate? And we have help messages. That's one thing I forgot to say earlier is these little question marks. You're like, okay, what are you asking for here? And we generally have explanations for that information in here. And then the bulls. So we basically are just talking about numbers here. And then we can talk about what we're doing for, what do we bring in for replacements if we're buying replacements versus raising replacements, what we sell and so on. All of those numbers really go into this tab. And then of course our feed. So again, we could go in and list all of the different feed that we use. We've got pasture that we use for 5 months. We've got salt and mineral, so on. And what is that? So how many head does that get fed to, or as far as the cows go? And then what is our total? So it does some calculations for us with that. Suckling calves, what do we feed? What do we feed the cows? What do we feed the bulls? Do we put any conditioner or whatever in with the suckling calves? All right. And then expenses. This is where we have, what are you paying for all these things? Are there other direct expenses? Here's that overhead figure again. That we can say, let's charge so much per unit, or what's our total cash expenses for overhead. And then other revenue, because we actually add in we actually have sales over under the livestock numbers, but we might have some other revenue and then a report. That kind of looks pretty similar to what we just looked at. Okay. And I know that our programmer was fixing some things today. I had gone over with him some numbers. So I know on my non-breeding background in cattle, some of that was actually still being fixed. So, but it's got a very similar look and feel. One of the things we're trying to do then is we'll put it into the whole farm. So not only will you have your cattle that can be part of a pro forma projection, profit and loss statement, and also our crops in there too. So, okay. So it's really, it'll just be an add-on module. And then like say, we're working on the specialty crops as well. So that'll probably be an additional add-on to the budget calculator. So we continue to advance it. Oh, I know one thing I didn't show you. I'm going to flip back here and see what this does. Then back over to the corn soybean thing real quick here again, is that when I'm looking at a report, there's this analysis section. So here's that break even. Here's where all that is. But it has to be basically related to a budget that we've got relatively completed. The program doesn't know necessarily that it's complete, so we really leave it up to you, because you really wouldn't want to do analysis unless you had complete information in, right? Okay, but here's that risk analysis section. Okay, and So I can say, like, say, if I'm down here in Gage County, and this was my expected yield, it's a little bit higher than what the national average is for irrigated, right? But anyway, I can click on here and I can click wherever, but there's a lot of detail in here. It's going to ask for our APH. What is our insurance projected prices is what it was this last year. That'll change soon. Average of the December futures price during the month of February. So we won't have that new figure for 25 for a while, but this is what it was. Then we could go through and say, okay, rather than 275 bushel, I only had 185 bushel. And what would I project my harvest price to be? So there's a lot of things in here. What coverage level did I have for crop insurance? I could put my own premium in here, $6 an acre. And so on, just work through this and I can see a disaster report. This is kind of what I showed you in that screenshot earlier. Okay. I didn't complete this, but you can see, what that outcome would be. I didn't complete it. I'm sorry. But anyway, so you can see that along with your original projections, what the situation looks like with the response. So it's kind of and we actually just have that for corn and soybeans. Because again, the data that we had for those different counties and regions really was for corn and soybeans at this point in time. It's one of those things, if we have time and money, we can do more with too. So, all right. All right, so I think we're close to our time. I really want to make sure I'm answering your questions, and again, don't be overwhelmed. There's a lot here, but again, you can just come in and create your own budgets, or you can just come in and once you have your account, you can drop down one of our budgets and then just start working away and making changes to it. You're gonna add things in. You're going to add your power units, your implements. You can delete all the university stuff. You don't need to look at that necessarily. You can go off of the materials we have and the prices we have and see, is that comparable to what you are looking at? Again, you're going to add in your own labor and your irrigation system. So once you work through these details and that stuff is there for you, you can work through this operations, what equipment am I using? What materials am I using? When am I doing it? And basically it helps you create a budget, helps you create your enterprise budget. So, and then I hope I answered the question pretty well on the cash and economic side of things, but cash is just the cash things we pay out, and economic is that total cost with depreciation and opportunity costs included. So, okay.
Yeah, good deal. Thank you. So, do we have any other questions or anything last minute?
Well, thank you for hanging in there.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Glennis. I don't think we have any others. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, I hope to work with you more if you want to work with the enterprise budgets that we have. We appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you everybody for joining us today during Ag Smart Money Week. Free webinars continue through Friday, and you can find the schedule and registration information at cap.unl.edu/smartmoney. As you close out of Zoom, you will see a brief evaluation about today's webinar. We would really appreciate your feedback about this presentation and ideas for future sessions. Have a great evening.